Today I want to talk to you about matching your audio.
Every moment is a teachable moment.
For a lot of us, when we do a job, when we are voicing a job and we submit our audio files, we'd like to think that they're perfect, but there are times when we are asked to do a retake, and sometimes it's not within the same day, and it's not even within the same week. It might even be 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or maybe even a year afterwards. And we are then stuck with figuring out how we're going to best match the audio, because we only have 1 or 2 lines that we need to make sound exactly like we made them sound when we recorded them in the first place. Here are some of my tips on the easiest way to create a matching piece of audio. So I think one of the first things I do is when I originally save the file, I make sure that I save that file with the date that I recorded it, as well as the microphone that I used. Because if I'm asked for a retake, I have multiple microphones. If I'm asked for a retake, I'll have to remember which microphone that I use. So that's number one. You want to make sure you use the same microphone. And if you only have one microphone, well, then that's great. But I think a lot of us as voice actors, we might have more than one microphone. So start getting yourself into the habit of naming your files with a date stamp, as well as maybe what microphone, or putting it in a folder so that you know what microphone it was recorded with. The next thing that's important is that you know your voice within certain times of the day. So for example, in the early morning hours, my voice is a whole lot lower. And I can actually tell when I listen back to a recording if that's typically the case. So you need to be aware of your voice print during different times. Now, I also can recognize my voice when it's been a long day or the end of the day and my voice is a little bit tired, because it tends to pitch up and get a little bit strained. That's another thing to recognize when you're listening back to the original audio. And try to match up, if you can, the same time of day, especially when you need to create that lower register voice that you might have. Most people have that in the early morning hours. I know that if it's the end of the day and I have to recreate that, it's very, very difficult for that to happen. The next thing you want to think about when you're trying to match the audio is actually playing into your maybe punch and roll sessions, so that you can actually hear your pitch and hear your pacing, hear the tone as you're getting ready to go ahead and either replace that line or add another line. So I always like to kind of go back a few, at least 20 to 30 seconds before the line that I have to replace, and listen to it and actually maybe voice along with it if I can, until I press that record button, so that I can match that audio as close as possible. And then I'll listen back to it very carefully. And the next thing, of course, I'll know if I'm within the proximity of the microphone, right, that I need to be. And for me, in my studio, the proximity to my microphone is everything, because I could literally just, maybe be a couple of half an inch back, and it will completely change my sound. And I can actually see this in the waveform. So a lot of times when you're recording and you're doing that punch and roll, you can actually look at the waveform and compare the two to see if they're within the same scope. And then, of course, also listening back to that, you can find out and adjust how close or how far back you are from the microphone. So be careful when you're in your studio not to be changing your mic position too many times if you can help it, because that's going to actually help you to match your audio a whole lot better. If you're not worried about, oh gosh, did I have it above my mouth? Did I have it, did I have it, 47 degrees versus 45 degrees? Did I have my mouth, facing this way? So if you don't move your microphone, if you can help it, that really helps. I know that for me, I've got 3 microphones in my booth, and they don't typically move, or they won't move multiple times within a session. Let's put it that way, unless I need to adjust something. And so if I don't have to move it, I don't. And the last thing, make sure that you save your file in the same exact format, of course. I always save my files in the highest bitrate in WAV format. And then if my client is looking for maybe a lower 16-bit, instead of I save mine in a 48 or a 32, and if they're looking for a 16-bit, I'll make sure that I give them a 16-bit, or I'll give them an MP3 of 192 or 128. But make sure that you match up the file formats as well, and that will really help you get very close to vocally matching a file from any time that you've done from last week or last year. For more performance tips, make sure to check out my videos here. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next week.